Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Stitch Goddess podcast. My name is Elizabeth, and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Elissa Pack. Show notes for this podcast will be on my blog, which is thestitchgoddess.com. I wanted to create a podcast where I could talk about my knitting, the sewing that I'm doing, and some of the quilting that I'm doing as well. And I wanted to create a podcast for three reasons: inspiration, accountability, and joy. I have been recently watching lots of podcasts, mostly knitting podcasts, and I'm absolutely inspired by Maria from Stitched in Sweden, Danny from Little Bobbins Knits, Lisa Comfort from Sew Over It, and Cheryl Temple over at Stitchy Bee. And I just love what they're doing, and I wanted to be part of this community, so here we go. I also wanted to use this podcast as a way to keep myself accountable to a challenge that I'm setting up for myself this year. It's 2018, and I have 18 projects for 2018 that I would like to make, and this will help me keep on track, help me stay focused on what I'm doing. And I love to see all the projects that everyone else is doing, but I also want to focus on what I'm working on, and I think that's really important. The third reason that I wanted to make a podcast is joy. I love yarn, I love knitting. I've been knitting for a very long time, and I am having so much fun making things that I wanted to share this joy with you. And I hope you enjoy what I'm making. This podcast is going to feature all the usual things that you see on a regular podcast: works in progress, finished objects, upcoming projects, but also things that I'm going to pull from what I'm going to call my finished objects archive to share things that I've made that I don't think anybody has really ever seen. So I want to be able to recognize all the effort that I put into it and celebrate those things. So, getting started with finished objects. I have a lot of finished objects recently. It's the brand new year. I had a lot of finished objects right towards the end of the year. And speaking of joy, the first finished object that I have to share is this Little Hearts cardigan. Pattern is by Maria Manska from Stitched in Sweden, and this just makes me absolutely happy to look at it. I love these little hearts. This is actually my second attempt at color work, and I'm really pleased with how this turned out. The yarn that I used is Drops Baby Merino, and this is just in a very pale gray, silvery gray color, and I was looking for a yarn that I wanted to pair with this pattern, and I almost chose a Madeline Tosh Merino Light in Lepidoptera. I have a lot of that yarn, and it was really stunning, but I had some leftover bits of this blue yarn, and I thought it looked so stunning together with the gray that I thought I'll just go ahead and use this. This is a project for a friend of mine who is having a baby. She is either just about to have a baby, having the baby, or has had the baby and just hasn't let me know. So I think she's going to be really thrilled with this. I would send her periodic pictures of the progress, and she said that it was no longer a sweater, but a sweater. And I love that. I think that's so cute. The yarn that I used for the hearts and for the color work is this yarn from Madeline Tosh. And it is a Tosh Merino Light Unicorn Tail. I actually bought this for another project, which I will talk about another time. But I had just a little bit left over, and I was sure that I was going to need more, so I went out and I bought two little mini unicorn tails. I just love these. They're so squishy and they're so pretty. It's this really deep blue, silvery bluish color that looks like the color of the ocean when you are way deep into the ocean, I think. I'm not a scuba diver, but I watched videos of people scuba diving and I think that's fascinating. This color is a really dark, deep blue with just a little bit of gray, and so I think it complements the gray of the sweater really, really nicely. I'm thrilled with how it turned out. I've used some mother of pearl buttons. That tends to be my signature go-to button look. And the other thing that I really it just tickles me to be able to do this is the label. My friend, who is the recipient, or she's the mother of the recipient, she gave me these labels that say Tricoté par Elisabeth. We met when we were living in France, and she gave me some labels to use for knitted objects or sewing objects. Well, mostly knitted objects because tricoté means knit by Elizabeth. The other reason why I'm so pleased with this, it's so soft. It has created such a lovely fabric. I just love it. But it was a really sentimental choice of yarn. I was looking through my stash to try to find an appropriate weight yarn for this project, and I came across some leftovers of this yarn, which I used on this project, which is the baby blanket that I knit when I was pregnant. And this is a pattern that I modified from one that I found on Ravelry, which was just a garter rib blanket. And I put in one long column of cables going down, and then I put little French knots at each one. It was supposed to be owls, but I didn't put enough cables to actually make it look like eyes, and I don't think I had the cables going in the right direction. But it's very interesting how the fabric for this blanket is not nearly as sort of soft as this. The stockinette on this pattern is just exquisite. It's just lovely. So that was a really sentimental choice. This is my first sort of object from my finished object archive. I made this back in 2013 and 2014. This is all that I have left of that yarn. I just have a tiny little ball, and I think I'm going to go ahead and save this for another project, which I will talk about another time. I made this sweater using the fiber company Terra yarn in the eucalyptus colorway, and it's a really nice soft yarn. It is made out of 40% baby alpaca, 40% wool, and 20% silk. It's 50 grams, 98 yards. And this was something that I had made a few years ago. I think I thought after our son was born that I would have a lot of time to knit. That did not happen. And so by the time I actually made this, I think our son was too big to wear it. So I had finished this object and he didn't get to wear it. So I've saved it, and I think it's a lovely thing to be able to send this off to my friend. I'll go ahead and make sure to add another label, but I realized that I had not ever sewn on the buttons, so I sewed on some green mother of pearlish buttons last night. So I'm very pleased with that. And since these are going away very soon, I wanted to show one of the things that I'm doing. I'm sending a little card with an extra button, some extra yarn, and what the project is, what size it is, what it's made from, and the directions for how to actually care for it. I think it's really useful information so that people will know, can I throw this into the washing machine or do I need to wash this by hand? So one of the other finished objects that I am going to be sending off is this quilt, which I made, and it's awfully big. This is actually just a baby quilt, baby-sized quilt, and I looked through Pinterest and found 3 or 4 quilt ideas that I wanted to send to my friend, and I asked her, what do you like? And she liked them all, and when I sent her one that looked like this, she was just absolutely enthralled. And the picture online showed the quilt something like this, where it showed the background, and I was able to find the exact same fabric. So I love this. This is really sweet. I just love how it sort of picks up some of the blue from the binding, and it's just such a cheerful, bright, colorful fabric. I'm really happy I found it. The only thing that I did differently on the front was to add these yellow patches in the quilt, and I used some leftover fabric that I had from another finished object, which is a dress. This is one of my other finished objects. I actually finished this last summer-ish, just in time for it to turn fall. So this is made from a cotton lawn from Atelier Brunette, and it's the Doris dress from Sew Over It. There are some ties in the back. I thought they went around the front, and then I looked back at the pattern, and they tie in the back. But this is a really light, summery dress. I love the idea of just a bright yellow. It's very cheerful, light cotton, and I think it will be really, really nice when there is not snow on the ground right now. So I look forward to wearing this when the weather warms up in a few months. On to works in progress. I have one more finished object. This was very nearly a work in progress, and I've been dying to shoot this podcast, and I was dying to finish these socks at the same time, and the socks won the race. These are my Lady Grey socks. The pattern is by Carrie Bloomer from Carrie Knits on Instagram, and I think maybe on Ravelry too. But the yarn is by a local dyer, Live to Dye. This is the Luxurious Fingering. It is 80% superwash merino wool, 10% cashmere, and 10% silk. It is really, really lovely, and it's in a variegated colorway called Corundum Stone. And I think it was in one of the first few videos that Maria from Stitched in Sweden posted, where she talked about color pooling, and I had never heard that expression before. And as I was knitting these socks, I learned exactly what that means. This is a perfect example. I think it's hysterical that it ended up looking, it's a spiral. It just keeps going around and around. And it keeps doing that even down the foot a little bit, although it's more prominent on the leg portion. There are cables that run down the front of the sock, and there is a left and a right. So the cables will either face each other or turn away from each other as you're wearing them. They are really, really soft, very, very comfortable, and I'm really, really pleased with how well these turned out. I had hoped to have these finished before Christmas, but I finished several other projects instead. So these I just finished 2 days ago, and I'm absolutely delighted. They still need to be washed and blocked, but I'm so pleased with these. Okay, now on to works in progress. At the moment I have 2 works in progress. I am doing a cardigan. It's the Ronin cardigan by Andrea Mowry this is a Brooklyn tweed pattern. This is in the Shelter yarn. It's 100% American wool. This is the grown in Wyoming, spun in New England. This is the Shelter yarn in the Homemade Jam colorway. I remember buying this from Pearl Soho probably in 2012, and the photographs on Pearl Soho showed it to be a really bright, vibrant, sort of deep burgundy red. And when I got the yarn, I was so disappointed because this was not the color that I wanted for myself. I wanted something a lot brighter. I knit up a swatch and I didn't like it enough to want to make that for myself. So this is a gift for my friend in Australia, and I'm trying to finish it as quickly as possible. No, I'm not. I'm trying to finish it so that in a few months, when it's winter there, it's winter here, but when it's winter in Australia in June, this will come in really, really handy. And so far I have finished the body, the sleeves, and the next part is a brioche collar that will go up here, come around, and then come back down. And then there's another brioche pocket that will be attached along the bottom. My second work in progress is the Donalister shawl. It is a mystery knit along with Crafty Flutterby Creations, and Clue 2 has already been released, and so what I'm going to show you is the work up through Clue 1. So if you are working on this particular shawl and you haven't finished Clue number 1, you may not want to look, but this is the progress so far. It is a heavily cabled shawl with lots of stripes. That's what I can say about it right now. It's very, very soft. I bought the kit from Michelle at Crafty Flutterby Creations, and I'm using the Iris colorway and just a natural. This yarn is by Unplanned Peacock Studio. And this is 70% alpaca, 30% merino, and it is very, very soft. It's coming out very, very nicely. I won't show progress on this until after the next Clue has been released, so that I don't spoil it for anyone else. Okay, other works in progress aside from knitting include a dress that is right behind me. This is another dress by Sew Over It. This is the Betty dress, and I bought this fabric from Sew Over It in London. This is the Sailor's Knot pattern, and when I first saw this fabric I knew I wanted to make a Betty dress, and it has this lovely V in the back with a concealed zip, and the only thing left to do is to finish sort of sewing the very end of the zipper to the fabric and to do the hemming. Now, when I first got this fabric, it's a really lovely cotton, but it's also somewhat sheer. And I felt that I wouldn't be comfortable in it if with it just being made out of the cotton. So what I did was I bought some Italian stretch charmeuse from Mood Fabrics, and I made an entire second dress and used that to line the first one, or to line the main dress. And I tried this on the other day and it feels absolutely heavenly. It is really soft, it is very comfortable, and I'm really proud of my technique. My sewing is really improving. And on the zipper, on the inside, I did all this by hand. It's a slip stitch, and I think it just looks really fine, and I'm really, really pleased with how this turned out. So hopefully I will be able to wear this very soon. I did try it on, and it was just flowy and really, really comfortable. The only modification that I will make to this dress in the future, or the pattern in the future, is to lower the bodice by about 1 inch, because this hits just a little bit too high for me, and I think if I lower the bodice by about 1 inch, or lengthen the bodice by about 1 inch, it will feel really, really good. It will be at my waistline. So this is my sailor's knot Betty dress, and it swishes. I love that. Coming up, I have 2 projects that I will be casting on very quickly, very, very soon. For the Tacit hand warmers, I'm going to be using Madeline Tosh Merino Light in this yarn, which is the snake colorway. I've made a hat out of this yarn and I love it. And so I really want to get some hand warmers because I think it's really nice and fun to have a hat and glove set that are sort of made out of the same yarn. I think it's going to be really, really lovely. The other thing that I'm going to be starting is an artifice shawl, also by Hunter Hammerson, from her Curls or Curls 2 pattern book. And I will be using this yarn, which is the Dream in Color yarn. This is the Jilly yarn base. And it is 100% superwash merino wool. It's 440 yards per skein. And this is the Tidal colorway. And it has all these sort of greens and turquoises and dark blues. Very, very much my colors. And this is really, really nice, soft yarn. I think it's going to look exquisite in the artifice shawl, and I can't wait to get started. And I've been waiting to finish some projects so I could get started. So very happy that this is all done. That's everything for right now. I hope you enjoyed looking at the things that I'm working on, the finished objects and my works in progress. And I can't wait to show you what the rest of the projects will be for this year. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please contact me on Ravelry. You can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Elissa Pack, and the show notes will be at thestitchgoddess.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.